really, as Nikhil discussed, right, when we're focusing on building a system for the people with the people, we're focused on two audiences. There's you guys, right, our agencies, our content managers, and there's our end users, our, the citizens, the residents, the people who are going to be using the system. And so our partners at IDEO and Lullaby, they met with Georgia residents across the state to understand the fundamentals of how people access state services and how they prefer to access those services. And they also talked to a lot of you. So what I want to do today is dive in more on some of the things that jumped out at me from their user research. And then I'll tell you more about how our replatforming efforts are really going to help meet those needs and those things that jumped out from the research and help us prepare for the future. And then finally, I do want to switch gears a little bit and zoom in on what our development partners have been working on to ease your document management pains, because I know there's been a lot of document management pains, and we'll just end you with some of the work that we're actually accomplishing right now. So let's get started talking about that user research, or what we like to call building for the people with the people. One of the key things that we wanted to understand was how people want to access information. So, and how they want to interact with government, right? Not how they do interact with government. They don't necessarily have a choice in that matter, but how they would prefer to, what would really ease that transition when they're trying to work with us and access services from us. And so, how I wanted to go through some of the things that we found of how do people want to interact with us. And I'll tell you that one way that people don't necessarily want to interact with us is through paper mail. A lot of millennials reported missing documents that were sent via paper mail because I never checked my mail. This surprised me. I check my mail every day. And I look through all of it, but I'm an old, is what they tell me. Not everybody checks their mail now. We heard this from quite a few people. Another Atlanta businessman exclaimed, "This is 2018. I can't believe we're waiting on the mail." Right? So they're definitely saying this isn't going to reach me necessarily. And while this bit of finding doesn't really apply to how we're building a digital platform, for those of you that have agencies that do interact by sending letters, I thought it was just something useful to keep in mind, right? Like if there's sometime wondering why aren't people responding, maybe this isn't the channel that they're going to be able to be reached by necessarily. We also know that while in many cases we want people to complete transactions online instead of coming into an office, if our digital options aren't easy and intuitive, people are still going to walk in. The same is true if we're charging an extra service charge, right, for someone to complete a transaction online, if it's free in the office but charges online. If someone has more free time than they have money, they're just going to walk in. It's going to cost us more to provide that service for them than if we just, ate the service charge and, let them complete those transactions online. So that's another thing just overall that we should be keeping in mind as far as how people complete these interactions and why they might still come into the office. Another thing we heard a lot was that preference for talking to a real person. Even as we work to bring more information online and cut down the need for phone calls, many people still need that human touch. Right, as one person pointed out, when things get messy, it's best to talk to somebody in person. So far as we've explored this question of how do people want to access information, we found that a lot of people still want to interact with people. I can relate, right? If I have something I have to deal with at the bank or something that I don't normally do, I don't want to sit through a phone tree and try to guess what the right combination of numbers is to get to the automated message. I just hit 0. Right? How quickly can I get to a real person so I can actually knock this out? So we know that people are still going to want to talk to people. Now, building a better digital system is not going to add more staff to your call centers and office locations. I'm aware of that. But what I think we can do is work together to make the things that people can find online easy to access and understand online. If we can meet those basic needs that we can handle online and make that easy, we're going to cut down on those kinds of calls to our call centers, and that will free up staff to be able to help those real messy problems and be able to focus on them instead of just figuring out how do I get this person off the call so I can answer the next call. So I do think that there's a way that building digital services can really help us bridge that gap as well. And that brings us to our next topic, which is making sure they get that best answer online that they can. Because when you Google something, you expect that first answer to be right. So even savvy business owners admitted to being tricked into clicking on things like the dmv.org page and getting through multiple pages of that before realizing it wasn't the real site they were supposed to go to. And that's because that was the first thing that popped up on Google, and so they assumed that that was going to be where they needed to go. Nikhil talked a lot about this already, but so I don't want to go down the Google search rabbit hole or anything, but it's just to bring up that we don't want to dismiss Google search in any way. There's a reason we come to reference Google in particular, and not just search engines, right? Because 54% of that, I think it was 56 when I looked at it, comes from Google in particular. And Bing's there at like 7%, and direct non-search and non-referral traffic is about 22%, 20 to 22. So what I want to point out is that it's an important factor to consider, right, on any digital system, is like meeting that Google problem. And so I want to sort of call out the things that make a website more search inclusive, like what's going to optimize it for search. One of those things for us is having a .gov domain. So generally Google will prioritize a .gov domain as a more official source. And then how long that domain has been around helps too. So anyone on a .georgia.gov URL, that's really helpful because it's pointing to being one of those official sources. And then all those things that we focus on for digital inclusivity, right? Responsive design, performance, that's where the page loads quickly, HTTPS, so secure HTTP, and accessibility. Google ranks those things well. So if your site is mobile, they think, okay, this is going to be, you're putting more thought into it. If it loads quickly, it actually helps rise in the search rankings as well. So all those things that we focus on just generally to make our site more inclusive are things that Google prioritizes. Another thing that we can do is mark up our code in the backend in the HTML with what we call schema markup. And what that does is it'll highlight, for example, the hours, and you can have like a little block of code around the hours in the background that says, hey Google, these are my hours of operation. And that's a way that Google can very easily provide the right information on their search page because we've marked something up in the backend. And that's where that structured content comes in. We can't mark something up in the backend if it's not in a structured field that sort of calls it out. And then, of course, if our content in general is optimized, if we use the term DMV, even though we know we're not the DMV because that's what someone's searching for, that's going to help as well. But all of these optimization efforts, they're only going to be useful if that content we're optimizing is accurate and consistent, right? And that's where you all come in. So we continue to explore how people want to interact with us, and we find that when they're on their computer, they're starting with a Google search, and they're expecting that it's going to be accurate the first time. It's going to get us in the right place. So what else? How else do people want to access information? Texting. We heard this a lot from a lot of different demographics, right? This wasn't just the millennials. A lot of people mentioned that it would be nice if they could just have the status of the process they're working through texted to them. Or if they can sort of text a question and get a quick response back when we start talking about those simple answers. So something else you can think about is chatbots and how a lot of people are integrating chatbots to give quick answers to questions. So we've also talked in the past about how while a lot of people have mobile devices, not everybody has a data plan. So we're not necessarily thinking about how they're browsing the web, but texting is a quick way to access information without going through a data plan. And then finally, voice search, right? This is something actually that did not come up in our conversations with citizens, but that said, we also know that 20% of mobile searches were made using voice in 2016. Now this isn't referring to specific technology. I'm not saying like 20% were from Amazon Echoes, because that's not what it was. It's all of the different ways that people can search. So when you do like a Hey Google or a Hey Siri on your phone, and I hope I didn't just wake up all of your phones. Those are the things that we're looking at for voice-activated search. So when someone says, hey Google, what is the final score to the Hawks game? Or, hey Siri, what time does the DMV open? By the way, I tried that yesterday for Sharonda, and it gave me DDS. I was so excited. and it showed me the nearest location and told me what time it was going to open. So that's activating voice search, and that's being used to get a specific piece of information, right? Like, give me an answer to this question. Now, it could be that some of the people we talked to use voice search on their devices, but they didn't think to call it out as a thing that they do, right? Research company ComScore actually estimates that by 2020, 50% of all searches are going to be done using voice search. And if the way my kids get answers to questions is any indication, they just ask our Amazon Echo every question that they have. She only gets it right like a quarter of the time, but eventually, right? If we keep working on content. And so this takes us back to that important point, right? In voice search, you only get that first result. So we need to get to the point and try to really chunk those key pieces of information. All right, so we've added mobile here to our list, not just for mobile browsing, but also texting and voice, like the little machine in our hands that does everything. And we're going to make room specifically for voice search on here too. But something else that didn't really come up was a need for mobile apps. Really, nobody said they want to download a mobile app to interact with government. That's not, sort of a need that came up. They also didn't mention social media, right? Nobody said they'd prefer to tweet at government or follow government agencies on Facebook. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need to have a social media presence. We do, right? So for the people who are most likely going to follow us on social media, they're going to need to do that for their job. Maybe they're in public policy, or they're the advocates that are helping other people access these services, or the news media, might follow us. But typically, citizens aren't going to want to stay up to date with what's happening with our agencies, right? So we find that citizens are most likely going to use social media when they want to publicly shame us, right? Not have a relationship with us. My point is, don't take it personally if you're not getting a lot of views on your press releases or your Twitter feed, right? Like, the majority of people don't want to be regularly involved with government at all. They want us to be there when they need us, right? But they don't want to feel like they need us. So they might not be reading our blog posts or following us on Twitter. So let's recap one more time how people want to access this information. So they're looking for human interaction, still a lot. When there's something important, they want to talk to somebody. When they're on the web, they want to search and they want that first answer to be right so they can keep going. They want us to text them if we can, get that integrated. And we're all sort of going towards voice search as it gets better and we find that it's a quick way to answer questions. So the thing is, I think that we can help meet all of these needs with the new system, right? Even the human interaction one, if we free up your people to focus on the real stuff. A lot of this comes down to breaking down our information into bite-sized chunks, which Nikhil referred to a lot in the structuring. Because structuring and packaging it into smaller pieces can help us present things individually or group them all together depending on the need. This requires building towards a single source of truth where pieces of information can be reused in different ways as the platform continues to grow. And speaking of truth, people notice when different parts of your organization aren't on the same page. So we heard this sort of thing a lot, right? The website and what people said at the office, they're all different. So they notice that it doesn't match, and it's not just them. Our state employees notice it as well, right? Where someone mentioned that there's not a single thing, here done in a consistent way. Because we know that as we zoom out on each of these channels, we store the answers and the information in each channel separately, right? This is really kind of what it looks like on our side. Per agency, per division, we have different systems, we have different sources for those answers, those different sources of truth. So the opportunity for error here, even for citizens to get outdated information, this is huge. And our mess of information, it means that it's really hard for citizens to get what they need when they need it. So we need a way to help build in all this consistency, right? If we can find ways to help, give your content legs, we can help you have a more consistent message and less going back and forth updating things. So this is the ultimate goal, right? We want our call centers and locations, websites, applications, text, chat, even when different people are responsible for different pieces, we should be able to provide a unified front. And so wherever those users are, we want the right information to be available. So let me tell you what we think we can do to help that, how we can help meet that need. We've talked about chunking content based on the type of information it is. So structuring your content gives it more flexibility in life, but I'm going to talk more about what I mean by that. And that's where we're saying we don't talk about pages, right? We're thinking of chunks of information, little pieces that can group together or that can be separated out. Because when our content is standardized and broken up into discrete chunks based on the kind of information it is, we can easily reuse it in more than one place and make sure that information is up to date. So later when we start talking about the content migration from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, I will tell you what will take almost no work on your part is migrating things like the events or the press releases or the locations. Those are just boom, boom. We've got people that can do that. It takes no thought at all. It's where we have these long pages of information that we've got all these extra notes on the side of like, this one we need to look at, that one we need to look at. Someone's gonna have to look at all these pages, right? But the structured ones, those just go. We don't have to think about it. We can just be like, yep, ship it, right? So that's where these content types come in. And I'll give you one example of what we have on the platform that is going to be really easy to ship, and that's events. So we have our events content type that lists, for example, on a listing page on your homepage. And this, because we have it structured by date, you don't have to keep updating when an event passes. The system automatically drops off the old ones and populates with the new ones. And if you have no upcoming events, that box just disappears. You don't have to worry about having an empty box. There's just no box at all. So this is a way that we're able to really easily automate your information. That same information can go to a listing page of specifically focused on events. And of course, it can go to a detail page for that one event. And it can even put it all into a calendar invite that you can just add to your calendar instead of filling it all in again yourself. Structure isn't just a way to give your content more flexibility on your website. Done right, it has other benefits too. So some of the things that we can do is we can mark it up with that schema markup. So again, focusing on things like hours for that a specific location is open, or what sort of location that you're sending somebody to. That makes Google more likely to provide it as the first answer on search or the first answer in a Google Voice sort of interaction. And then it also makes it easier for your call center staff to look up information on your website as the official source of answers. I think DDS uses their locations on the website as a way to their call center. When someone calls with a question about a location, they look at the same thing that someone could look at on their computer. So we're all pulling from the same source of information. So we get these benefits now with content or with events and locations on the current system. But in the new system with a new underlying architecture, we'll be able to do even more with that structured content. Just a couple of things that we're looking to do to extend it is being able to take useful chunks to chatbots or text bots. So maybe we can connect it up in a way that you can text, what's my nearest location, or what time is this office open. And then finally, you'll be able to send your version of important content that your agency manages up to Georgia Gov to make sure that our version of your information stays up to date and doesn't get outdated. So we'll get notified if your important content changes. You don't have to tell us. We'll just get a ping in the system saying like, hey, this page changed. Go make sure our version's up to date. So that's something we're really excited about. And then we're also adding some new ways to structure your content. And I want to give you just a couple examples of the things that we're working on there that you can look forward to. One of the things we want to structure are your contacts in particular. So the research that we did with research firm User Insights last year found that a lot of traffic on your sites are to your contact pages. DFAX, for example, is one of the highest traffic pages on their site is the contacts page. And in general, we found that a lot of similar patterns exist across sites for contacts for different agencies. So what this means is that contact information is not only a critical type of information that people need and that you don't want to fall out of date, but it's also a perfect candidate for structuring. So if we can chunk that information into a name and a role and a phone number and a fax number and an email address, based on what you need, it makes it easier to group it into a listing page, for example, where we can pull all the different pieces of information from one contact into a row and give you a whole listed row of contacts, specific to however you group your information. We can also embed one of those contacts on a specific page and even link it to a staff bio if you want to. Or not, if you don't want to. That was one of ours. We're like, I don't know that everybody wants to link their bios with contacts, but you can. Or you can choose not to, and you can choose to keep those separate. The point is that you create that contact information once, and it can be repurposed across multiple different pages. And then you don't have to worry about, did you drop off somewhere, miss it someplace. Another item that User Insights research focused on was the effectiveness of how-to instructions that they found on some of your sites. So we saw this concept as one that could benefit from more intentional design treatments, so that it would be also a candidate for reuse in a lot of different places. So in particular, User Insights called out that how-to pages for DDS and Medicaid are an effective way to help users find what they need while keeping them within the website. So Clear steps can help people feel empowered to take charge of their own process. And then large, bold, numbered steps, right, are a nice design treatment that we can use to sort of help call that out. And that's going to give people that sense of empowerment and make it feel more clear and more manageable. So by making this a structured content type, instead of just content you put, in the middle of a body page, we can give those steps some clear design treatments, and we can give you different ways to have those design treatments. So we know that sometimes your steps aren't all that straightforward. It's not number 1, number 2, number 3. It's like, well, you can do this or that, or you can do that or that, or you have 3 different ways that you can do this thing, or you have to do all 5 of these, but not necessarily in a certain order, right? So we can give you different treatments that you can sort of focus on. So do you just want a checklist of things that have to be done eventually, or is it actually numbered steps? So by structuring it, we can help you choose which design treatment you need and really make it clear and easy to understand. And then we also know that these things like your contacts and your how-to steps and your documents and your locations, they don't exist in a vacuum. Often all of those go together to provide assistance for a service, right? So you don't just have a document to have a document. You have a document because this program needs it. Your locations, provide these services. Your how-tos or how to, access a service. And so we're creating a programs and services content type so that you can group all of those things together and really easily sort of bring it all under one focus. So as we're focusing on helping you present the work you do and the services that you provide in a way that makes the information easy for people to understand, we think that giving you structure to present them will help you do that. So you'll be able to fill in just the basics of a service and link them to different types of information that are connected to it, or even create that other chunk of information right within the page. And then the system can generate the rest of that for you. It can gather up everything that's related to a service and display it all together. And then you can go in and sort of organize it and manage it, more specifically as you need to make sure it all comes together. But it'll sort of help you get a really good starting place for pulling all that information together. So we often heard that a lot of you struggle between meeting those legal needs of your content while also making it easy to understand. And we think that combining those actionable chunks like contacts, documents, and simple how-to steps all on a page while also letting you link to that important legal terminology is a good way to help bridge that divide, help you meet the legal needs while also trying to make some things clear and simple where you need it. Now that's just a taste of what's to come. So to give you an idea of some of the other things that we're working on that I'm not going to dig into, we sort of grouped types of content into some different areas, like agency information, where you can define your organization and also different divisions within the organization as a organizational, a way to organize content. We've got those contacts, locations, and bios, all of which can sort of link together or not, depending on what you need. We have different ways to define your agency communications, so you'll recognize press releases and events. We're also sort of defining public records. A lot of you have these as PDFs right now, but if we can help you identify specific types of public records that you display, the hope is that we can, free them from the PDF and put them on a web page. And again, organize them however you need to. You'll have agency-specific alerts, which a lot of you have now on your site, so we're going to sort of expand that a little bit, so you can have it across the site or just on a couple of pages. And then instead of blogs, we're going to have news. And that news will be something that you can sort of redefine a title for each section of news or blog, so that if you have 3 different streams of news information, you don't have to sort of be constrained to calling one of it a blog. So just some things to make that easier. We've also got some visitor aids. That's where we've got our programs and services, how-to-whys and FAQs, the things that we think people are coming to sort of help them move along. And then ways to organize all of those other things together. So listing pages where you can group any type of thing together the way that you need to organize it in a list. Topic pages are where you sort of drill down and focus on a specific topic. And then landing pages help you aggregate a lot of different things at once for a campaign or just like a division section. So here's the thing, right? I know that sometimes it can get confusing to figure out which content type you should be using to accomplish a task. We don't want to make this more complicated, right? What we're really trying to do is focus on each thing having a specific job so that it's less confusing. It's more intuitive, what you would use for any specific task. And we're also focused on, we did a lot of user research even once we started working on this to make sure that what we're building makes sense to you. So some of you came in and just talked through with us, what news meant to you, and we called it post, and turns out nobody knew what post was. And so I'm glad that we did that user research, right? Because now we've got something that makes sense to you. And so we're also talking about adding in help text, and there's different ways that we can sort of do things in the back end now to make it more intuitive for you to pick what you need. And then for those of you that really only use the system to add a couple of things, maybe all you do is post press releases. For example, you can favorite the types that you use and have those content types float up to the top. So just ways to try to make your jobs easier as you're creating web content for the website. We've also been defining what content is going to migrate automatically and what needs to be manually built on the new system. So for example, contacts don't exist right now, so we can't migrate them automatically. What we can do is work with you to generate a list of what your contacts are and import them all, so you don't have to add them one by one. When it comes time for each of you to migrate, and Donna's going to talk about a lot of this later, but you'll have a DSGA team member who's going to work with you on understanding your content and how things can map and help you along the way so that this is a smooth and seamless process. So you're not going to be left high and dry. We're not going to be like, hey, migration time, good luck. You're going to hear from us a lot in between, and we'll make sure that y'all are ready to go and happy about it when we get there. Because ultimately, right, one of the main goals that we've set out to our development partners is to make this as easy as possible and make the best choices, the easy choices in the new system, right? We keep talking about making the right thing the easy thing, so you don't have to think about it. One way that we're working to make the right thing the easy thing is by extending how you add body content to some of your content types. And you guys, I think you're going to be so excited. But before I tell you the exciting thing, we got to back up, right? Let's define what the problem is now. Right now, most of our content is this unstructured content. So you've got your big body, thing here, and you put everything in there. And of course you put everything in there because that's the easiest way to organize everything, right? So you've got your links and your PDFs and your images, and you've organized it by section, and it's all there. But because it's unstructured, the system doesn't know it's all there. The system has no idea that there's PDFs even in this document page to do anything with it. It can't help you manage those files. So if you think of Nikhil's example of that W-2 tax form, right? This is the version of all of us typing out our tax information in a Word doc, however our heart's desire, and mailing it to the IRS and being like, good luck. Right? Like, we're not going to be able to file our taxes that way. So what we did about a year ago is we gave you another way to control that information by grouping them into structured column fields. So then you could take your PDFs and chunk them into related files, right? And now the system knows that those are files. You can get your list of links and just, group it in there. And when you're chunking it together, it gives us some progress of letting the system know what we want. And it also allows it to be responsive, right? And it's going to lay out a little bit more nicely. And now the system can tell you how many, kilobytes your file is, and it puts its own little icon in there. And it's gotten us a step farther to structuring that information. But it takes a lot more time. Those of you that have done that know it's a little more frustrating. And the layout's just not very intuitive to use. This is even after we've added improvements on it that our development partners are like, nobody has it this great. And I'm like, really? Because these are the basic things we need to get our jobs done. The layout's not super intuitive. It works, and it's still a little clunky. So here's the thing. After a lot of conversation and brainstorming with the team at Lullaby and going through all the different ways that we can manage your big pages of information, they figured out an easier way to make that content structured and still easy to use. And they've been able to bring structured chunks into your WYSIWYG body field. So it's not an either or, right? We can take your files and your images and your videos and you can drop them in the middle of the page, and the system's still gonna know that it's this structured chunk that has metadata hiding in the background, and it will know how to sort of manage it, how to treat it specifically around this image or a file. So here's some files, and then we can style them so they look a little bit different. But this file here in the WYSIWYG, the system knows what it is. The system can manage it and control it and help you version it. I'll get there later. I'm getting ahead of myself. And then we can do this with other pieces of content. So your how-do-Is that we've talked about, you can embed a how-do-I that you created somewhere else in the middle of a page wherever you want it. Or a contact chunk that's specific to this page, you can just drop in the contact, or a call to action that's saying like, now that you've read all this, here's where you go next. So I'm really excited because this gets right back to like the way that you're gonna, that you like to do things because it's the easiest way to manage it, but now we're able to bring that structure there. We're able to sort of meet both needs in one place. And then when you're grouping different unrelated chunks that don't necessarily go, meet that need of like a WYSIWYG page of information, we're going to be using Drupal 8's brand new layout builder functionality. I've been watching this layout builder for the last year because it looks really cool, and I kept waiting for it to like be ready for prime time, and they actually just hit just in time for us, where the Drupal core team has been working on managing layouts a lot easier. And so with their layout builder, it brings us more customizable layout options, and it brings us scheduled publishing to landing pages, which means that we can put way more of that layout control in all of y'all's hands. If we're not worried about, hey, if you make any changes to this page, it's live immediately and there's no undo, right? Like you can go in there and do things and schedule it and test it and make sure it's good before you publish it. You can do that in production and get sign off in production instead of messing around in staging and then hoping that someone approves it so that you can go recreate it in production. So this is going to give us so much more flexibility with your main landing pages. And then from there, we even have more flexibility in how we handle the column regions. So we'll be able to choose how we lay out pages based on how we should lay out pages and not based on what the defined columns and regions are for it. So it helps us make better layout choices too. So I think you can tell I'm really excited about all of this because I've been hearing the pain points for a couple of years and I've just been like, I'm sure we'll be able to get to it, and I feel like these are going to be some really great solutions to these problems. So those are just some of the things that we're working on, right, that I think are really going to help us all meet those goals. And here's the thing, right, I do want to say, Nikhil brought up earlier, if we could have hired anybody to do, tackle these problems with us, these vendor partners, if we could have just gone out on the street and hired the best of the best, the people that we have partnering with us are those people. Like, we've been really excited about like how well the procurement process worked out for us as far as our design team and also the development team. So we have some of the best minds in Drupal actively working to solve these hard problems. So just one example is the lead architect on our project. Her name's Karen. I think her Drupal name is like Karen because she's been doing this for so long. Karen S. She created the date field in Drupal way back when, right? Like some of the most basic building blocks. She used to maintain the WYSIWYG editor that we all use, the CK editor. And she currently maintains the schema.org modules. I think she wrote it. The schema stuff that writes that schema markup that I keep talking about that helps send that information to Facebook and Google and makes it easier for them to organize things. And that's just one of the members that's, of this team that's working with us. Everybody that's working with us on these projects, they maintain actively some tool or some other thing that everybody in Drupal uses because it's the easiest way to do the work. So the point is that we're in really good hands, right? The people that are working with us to solve hard problems, they're used to solving hard problems and they're really good at it. So that's been really exciting. I do think it makes all the difference. Which brings us to the last thing I want to talk to you about today, and that's document management. I know you guys can't wait because our sites have more PDFs than they do web pages in a lot of cases. And of course they do. We're government. Like, we work in files, right? But we've had a lot of trouble with dealing with our files, and that hasn't been lost on us at all. So we've made fixing document management the critical goal for the replatforming effort. So I'm going to tell you some about the much needed TLC that we had. And here's the thing, is that we knew that all these use cases that we had, the things we're struggling with, were things that everybody building websites was struggling with document management. And so I started researching tools. I can't tell you how many recommendations I got for document management tools that I researched, or how many people I asked, like, how are you solving this problem? And every time I felt like I was hitting a brick wall. Like, nobody really had an answer to the problems that we had with document management. And I started calling it my white whale, right? I'm like, this is the thing, like, I don't know how we're gonna get there. And when we hired our development partner team, we weren't sure what they were gonna recommend. I had sort of gotten to the point with all this research, I was like, they're gonna tell us some third-party tool that we're gonna have to integrate, that we're gonna have to teach you guys how to use this other tool to manage documents that we can bring in, and that's the last thing I wanted to do, because the last thing we need is another thing we have to worry about, right? Like, none of us wants to have to do that, but that's what all the solutions looked like. But instead, We got one of the core maintainers of Drupal's media tool. That's the thing that Drupal 8 uses to manage files and documents. They're on the case, and this guy's figured out how to extend Drupal's out-of-the-box media tool to meet all the needs we've thrown at him, which means it's just all right there and intuitive. For example, scheduled publishing of files. Oh, Dean. I put state agency employee, but y'all, that's Dean from DOL back there. He says staying up after midnight twice a month to publish documents became part of my job description. Now that is unacceptable, you guys, except in the current system, we couldn't find a way around it. So the problem is, standard Drupal behavior is that when even if you schedule publishing a page, the file associated with it, as soon as you've uploaded a file, it's immediately published. Like it's separate, so it's just there, it's out in the file system. So no, it's not linked to, but anybody that's figured out the way that you tend to upload these files, twice a week, like they could probably go find that file ahead of time and sometimes get information that nobody's supposed to have before a certain time. So what's the solution? Like, oh, just publish at midnight twice a month. That's fine, right? That's totally not fine. All right, so we have solved this with what I think is some pretty cool Drupal ninjutsu. So unpublished documents, they hide out in the private file storage until it's time to publish. And then once it's published, it moves to the public file storage. And yes, it has different paths during that, but that doesn't matter because Drupal's maintaining the path and just sort of links to the right thing no matter what. So whereas the file gets hidden away, it doesn't matter to us. We just know that it can be unpublished when we need it to and published when we need it to, and it can link to publishing with the file or with the page and unpublishing with the page when we need to, and we can schedule it as well. Another thing we've heard concerns about is that when you delete a file or a page on your site, it's gone forever. Kind of scary if you think, maybe someone might accidentally delete this thing I need, but I don't even know that they deleted it, right? Because I wasn't the one that did it. So we've taken a suggestion from the mass.gov team, because they also do Drupal 8, and we've created a trash state. So the neat thing about trash, right? We know how that works. Trash isn't delete forever. It's just like a holding place of the things that you don't want anymore. So we'll have a document trash bin. You can even search through it or see who deleted a thing. And they can just hang out there for a while. What we'll probably do is set things to clear out after like 3 months because we don't want stuff in the trash forever. But that'll give you time to see what's there in the meantime in case something needs to be recovered. So basically you get a good undo window for delete of pages or files, and no one from the agencies will be able to like fully delete a thing, but we'll go through and clean things out on some sort of scheduled system. And then another challenge we focused on was making it easier for you to replace old files with a new official version. Now, for those of you that don't do this, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'll try to explain it a little bit, because those of you that do, the pain is so real. So we get a ticket like this probably once a week or so that says, hey, when we replace a document, such as a PDF uploaded as a related file, there appears to be a lag in when the correct file shows up. So here's what happens. So either people replace a file with another one of the same name, right, because the old one shouldn't be there anymore, let's just replace it. But they don't see the update right away, and that's because of the way that Drupal caches files. So it might be like the next day before you see the new version online. And then you just don't know, is it really there? Did it work? I don't know. When's it ever going to come up? I see so many heads nodding. Like, yes, this is my life. So sometimes instead of dealing with that, what people will do is they'll upload a new version with a new name, right? Because that's going to show up right away. We're not linking to the old one anymore, but Google's still linking to the old one. So a couple months later, you realize like, oh wait, Google's still pointing to this old one even though I'm pointing to this new one, right? Again, everyone's like, this is my life. So now we're building in some real replace and versioning capabilities where you can say, I want to replace this file with this other file. And again, Drupal's going to upload the new one and just change what it points to for you. So no more struggling with old files being cached 24 hours or Google linking to the old one, or even some other third-party entity linking to your old file. Because as long as you use the replace system, the system's going to swap the files for you and maintain the links across your site. So what we're doing is we're completely obscuring the path to the blah, blah, blah .pdf Instead, the link will look like /download. And so our path that everybody sees, and regardless of where you are, it doesn't have the full path. It has the /download link that Drupal will know which file to give you at any point. So that sort of removes all of those problems that we deal with, but it still gets you the file that you need when you click on it. So we've even got the system searching to see if a file that you're about to upload already exists on the system. So maybe your colleague already put it in there and you don't have 4 versions of the exact same thing. It can say like, hey, you've already got this. This is what it's called. Maybe just link to that one. So I think that's going to be just a really neat way to sort of do that. And it's not searching to see if it's the same name. It's searching to see if it's the same content. Like what the actual information is, which I think is pretty great. So similarly, you can see where a file is in use, right? Like this one's in use 1 place and this one's in use 3 places. So before you trash something or replace something, you know where all it's touching. Super cool. All right, I think I got one or two more for you here. The next is that Drupal 8 allows drag and drop file uploads out of the box. This isn't even something cool we have to solve. We hear that problem of like uploading photographs for a gallery one at a time is really time consuming, and that's really frustrating. Or I have these 5 files that are all related and I just want to add them all at once. So you're not going to have this problem anymore because you can drag and drop multiple files or images all at one time. And like boom, it'll just upload them. Now with that said, we're still going to make you add the appropriate metadata for each one after you drop them in. It's just you're going to get a list of things and it'll be like, what's the name of this one? And we want you to put in a real name because the file name is not helpful. So we will want you to take the time to put in a real name. And if it's an image, we'll want you to take in the time to put in the alt text because that's really important information. But it won't be those extra steps of like click, browse, upload this one, fill it all out, click, browse, right? Like you get a bulk start and then you just put in those pieces of information that you need to get moving. And then finally, here's the last one. For every PDF form, you need to make a page. I collapsed for this one, man. So even the smallest little PDF needs an empty page just to be uploaded, right? And that just can get annoying because you're clicking on a page just for a file, or like there's supposed to be a description in a file, but nobody fills out the description. So now you've just got this page for a file. So now, because we're associating that metadata, that title and other information with a file or an image directly to like that media element, we don't need a separate page for it. So we can link things on a page without having a page just for the file. All right, so to recap, some of the cool things that you can look forward to, we'll have scheduled publishing of files. Again, I'm like, Dean doesn't have to stay up past midnight anymore. You can trash your files instead of deleting them, so they're not gone forever right away. You've got that little bit of an undo time. Replacing your files is going to remove the old versions, so Google's not going to link to the old one anymore. We have bulk drag and drop uploads, and we've removed that annoying separate page, and now your document's just going to be a document. So all of these are things that I have seen. Like, it's not theoretical, like they've done the work and we've seen demos. And so like this is one of the first things they've been focusing on building for us. So this is gonna be really cool. And this is just one of the things that's coming your way. So I'm really excited. But that's it, y'all. I'm actually gonna let y'all get lunch about the right time. So, yeah, other cheers. So today I focused primarily on the feedback we've heard from citizens and the content managers that we've talked to, right? We had lots of quotes for like, here's the things people have been talking about. And that's how it impacts the direction that we're headed. So if you haven't been tapped to provide feedback yet, but you want to, the only reason we haven't tapped you is because we don't know that you want to get involved, right? So again, please, if you want to have your voice heard, reach out to Yen via email. She'll be able to add you to the list. We have people we're looking to just sort of test feedback on, here's the thing we're building, how does this work for you? That's sort of our beta testing. And there's some other different things that we might reach out for when we're thinking about naming or just like how things work to make sure they work as easy as they can. So to get added to that list, email Yen. And then that's it. So coming up after lunch, Donna's going to talk more about that migration process. And then the moment you've all been waiting for, Idea is going to talk more about the design process and the design elements that we're working, the ones that we built and the ones that we're working towards. And at the end of the day, we'll come back on stage to answer all those questions that you've got left. Thank you.